Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. Many Jews believe that the land that is now called Israel belongs to them as a result of a covenant God made with Abraham to give the promised land to the Jewish people. Does the Quran contain such a pronouncement? We're going to look at that right now. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
So, the Promised Land, it's a biblical concept. It's found in the Tanakh, supposedly, Dr. Shabir. But what about the Quran? Does the Quran say anything about the Promised Land? So, to begin and to provide some context, Dr. Shabir, maybe you should talk about what the Tanakh says about the Promised Land.
Yeah, so you mentioned the promise made to Abraham. So in the book of Genesis, in chapter 15, it is said that God told Abraham that this is the land that I'm giving to you for an inheritance for your progeny forever. And that land is described as being from the Nile River to the Euphrates River. So if, we all know our geography, especially the, conflicts in other parts of the world force us to learn geography the hard way, obviously. We wish there were no conflicts. But now, think about the Nile that runs through Africa, through Egypt, and all the way down south, and then all the way to the Euphrates, which is, running through Iraq, but it's now Iraq. So we're thinking about a whole swath of land that includes many of the Arab countries, the Gulf countries, and all the way east towards Iraq. So some who take the Bible literally will insist that that's God's promise, and it is for the descendants of Abraham. Now, one might say, well, the descendants of Abraham include the descendants include the Arabs, being descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael. But some might look at other verses of the Bible which say that the promise to Abraham is actually to be realized through his son Isaac, in which case the Arabs might be excluded. So depends on how one interprets these passages. And of course, that's not the only passage. Some other passages make mention of more limited areas, but one can say that the limited areas do not, by their very mention, exclude the larger area once mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, Dr. Shabir, about Islam, but I also want to ask you about Christianity at some point. So keep that in the back of your head,
Sure.
Because Christians have the Bible, and the Tanakh is also part of that. So I want to understand first: does the Quran say anything about this promised land that is to be given to the Jews?
Sure. So as a preface to that answer, Safia, allow me to just mention, the broader situation that the Quran, in many ways, mirrors what is there in the Bible already. So if the Quran omits something that is there in the Bible, one must ask why. Like, why is the Quran going in a different direction here, not repeating that which is there in the Bible? Especially when the Quran is touching upon the issues that are mentioned there in the Bible, but not going the full length. So with that in mind, it is interesting that the Quran often mentions that God caused the people with Moses to inherit the land and to dwell in the land, and God's command to them is to dwell in the land that God has prescribed for you. Enter the land with humility, for example. So we're seeing in the Quran that while there is some acknowledgement that the people under Moses, we can say the Israelites, are given some land, they are given the land as inheritors, and from the Quranic perspective, the inheritance of anything shifts from one generation to another. Like, for example, it says that God caused the people of Israel to inherit the Torah. So inheriting the Torah does not mean that you own it as your own exclusive property forever, but it's going to be passed on from generation to generation, and it's going to be accessible to all, as the Torah now can be read and studied by anyone, and anyone might find guidance in it. The Quran says in it is guidance and light. The Quran speaks about the land, and then the Quran also gives cautions about like who might inherit and to whom does God's promise belong? So the 21st chapter of the Quran tells us that God is referring to the Psalms. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. We have written in the Torah that the land will be inherited by our righteous servants. So whereas we see a contrast here, whereas in the Torah, there is the stark mention that this land is given to you. This is the promised land for you, almost regardless. In fact, the book of Deuteronomy even says that do not think that it's by your righteousness that you inherited the land. No, it's God's special favor on you. God has chosen you. Well, there's a certain religious element to that. I mean, it's good to think that it's not our righteousness that won us any favors from God. It's God's special favor on us. But if people run away with the idea that, yeah, we are the chosen people and God has given us this land because we are the chosen people, well, that's contrary to what the Quran is depicting. The Quran is saying it is the righteous people who will inherit the land. So putting two and two together, one might read the Quran and come away with the idea that those were the righteous people at the time, as compared with other nations that were, from the Quranic perspective, worshipping idols, going astray, and God has given a guidance which was embraced by these people. And these then are the chosen people. They are God's favorites on earth at the time due to their adherence to monotheism and to the scriptural revelation that has come from God through the prophet Moses and other prophets after him. So the Quran then is very clear. It is the righteous people that will inherit. And the contrary is also mentioned in the Quran, that if people are not righteous, then the inheritance might actually pass on to someone else. So, for example, when it is shown in the second chapter of the Quran, Abraham praying for his descendants to, have favor in the sight of God and to inherit the land and basically to benefit from all of its fruits and products. God says, "La yanalu ahdi dhalimin." My ahd, or my covenant, does not reach the oppressive people. So, in other words, in essence, I am assenting to what you are requesting, Abraham. But if your descendants turn out to be oppressive people, don't expect that my favors are going to be conferred upon them as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Shabir, tell me about Christianity now. You've talked about Judaism and Islam. What does Christianity say about the Promised Land?
Yeah, you've already indicated, Sophia, that Christianity has inherited the Old Testament, what they call the Old Testament, but which for our Jewish friends are the Tanakh, the sacred scriptures, let's put it that way, or the Hebrew Bible. To the Hebrew Bible, Christians have appended the New Testament writings. And in the New Testament writings, there is an obvious acknowledgement of the Old Testament. And together, Christians consider it to be one book, the Holy Bible, consisting of the Old Testament and New Testament, the two mirroring each other, and the New Testament ratifying the Old. Unless, of course, there is something that abrogates the Old Testament, like when Jesus says, for example, "You have heard it said, but I say unto you." There is a clear new direction being indicated here. But what is interesting is that the New Testament continues to acknowledge that this land was given to the Israelites. Now, to be sure, the New Testament envisions Christians as the new Israel, but that may be seen to have a sort of spiritual meaning in that they're not literally the new Israel as in terms of like a racial stock, but they are the new, you can say, the spiritual inheritors. What Israel ideally should have been, Christians now are. That's one way of interpreting the New Testament references to this. But Christians have not laid claim to the land. They have not said that because we are the true Israel, we own the land. In fact, on the contrary, they have tended to acknowledge that the Jewish people own the land which is depicted in the Old Testament as being given to the people of Israel. So for both fundamentalist, or you might say Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox Jews, and for fundamentalist Christians, the land has been given to the people of Israel by God, and that is enough as a title deed for them.
All right, very interesting discussion. Thank you for sharing those insights with us, Dr.
You're
Shabir.
welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. We have some exciting news to share with you.
As you know, Let the Quran Speak has been on TV screens and social media for 22 years.
We've been reaching people all around the world, spreading positivity and good, and helping people experience the beauty of Islam and the accomplishments of Muslims.
We've been shooting in this very space for the past 2 decades.
And now, with the help of Allah, we're about to get the keys to Muslim Media Hub.
If you like what we're doing, you're going to love Muslim Media Hub even more.
Because it's the next step up.
Think new TV shows, podcasts, social media content, and films.
It will have new talent, more youth, and a lot more space and resources to do what we love: spread the message of Allah.
Our Muslim Media Hub costs $2.4 million.
And for that, we need to raise $300,000. Please give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help establish Muslim Media Hub so we can do this.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be of benefit to the Muslim community long after we are gone.
Thank you, and may Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always.
Assalamu alaikum.